Well, I want to welcome you all today. My name is Jim Reed, and I am the Executive Director of the Salvation Army Ethics Center that's located here in Winnipeg, Canada. And so on this Earth Day 2021, I want to welcome you to this special webinar that has been organized by a committee, a working group of the Social Issues Committee, part of the Salvation Army Ethics Center, and led by Crystal Porter, who in just a moment is going to take a lead, and we're going to welcome you to be with us for this hour. We have encountered a number of technical issues and realized that some of you may be having to see this in a recording, delayed kind of broadcast. Whether or not you're seeing us live and participating live or in delayed broadcast, we welcome you and want to acknowledge the importance of this Earth Day 2021. As I just said, the Salvation Army Ethics Center is physically located in Winnipeg. And wherever you are, I think if you take this moment to consider the land on which you reside and the history of the peoples on that land, we would like to acknowledge the land on which we reside here in Winnipeg. We acknowledge that we live and work, play and worship on Treaty 1 land in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dene, and Dakota peoples, and in the heart of the Red River Métis Nation. We acknowledge with respect the histories and cultures of these peoples. We acknowledge their stories and their stewardship of the land, the water, the plants, the animals, through many generations from time immemorial. May we who live here now live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its peoples. Crystal, I turn to you.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Well, Gwe Nin Dalawisi Crystal. Hi, my name is Crystal. I am Bigma from Newfoundland. And I am so happy that you're able to join us today. I'm an officer with the Salvation Army, currently residing in Winnipeg in the Prairie Division. I am the Divisional Youth Secretary and the Divisional Indigenous Ministries Consultant for the Prairie Division. At this time, I'm going to invite our panelists and my other co-host to introduce themselves and to briefly share their connection to the Salvation Army and where they currently reside.
I'll go first as co-host, I suppose. I'm Amy Fisher, and I am in the Salvation Army's Social Mission Department at Territorial Headquarters, and I'm the consultant for housing and homelessness. And I live in Belleville, Ontario.
I'm Michaela Jones. I work at our territorial headquarters in the property department. And I'm also a fourth generation settler. And I'm in Toronto, which is on the traditional territory of the Mississauga, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee. And one thing that's interesting about the territory in which I live is the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement from the traditional landholders, land caretakers, that everyone peaceably share the land and waters around the Great Lakes. So that's a really important context for the work that I do and where I live.
Hello, I am Chris Brekke, Bo Christoffer Brekke, coming to you from Oslo, Norway this evening, my time. I'm a soldier of the Temple Corps here in Oslo and work at THQ in the Norway, Iceland, and Faroe Islands territory, where I head up our Office for International Development, and also of particular relevance to today's event, I head up the social enterprise called Others, which is a Salvation Army initiative as well. So look forward to being with you tonight.
Jambos, everybody. My name is Meble Birengo. I live in Nairobi, Kenya. It's the eastern part of Africa. I'm a soldier at Nairobi Central Temple, which is one of the biggest temples in Africa. I was born and raised in the Salvation Army as an officer's child and soldier, and currently engaged with the International Social Justice Commission as a remote intern for impact measurement for others, Trade for Hope.
We're so thankful for everybody who was able to join us today. As we gathered with the Creation Care Committee, we came up with the name Creation Groans and what is our response? And we wanted to highlight that today as it is Earth Day. And so I want to invite each of you to talk about what you think about when you hear the phrase creation groans.
So I'll go ahead and start. Is that the right? Okay. When I hear the phrase creation groans, I have two reactions. One is a very personal reaction, and the other is more of a global concern. And so personally, when I live my life and go to work and what I observe in my day-to-day living, I see, the shores of the Great Lakes being eroded and huge storms like they've never been seen before. And this is not something that I'm reading about in the news. It's something that I see. We have a family cottage on Lake Huron, and we've lost 40 feet of our beachfront into, it's coming right up to the cottage. So it seems very clear that that cottage might not be standing in 20 years at the most. So on a very personal level, I can see these storms and this erosion and how it affects the world that I live in. And then, of course, in a global or a community, a larger context, of course, in the news, we see peoples that are displaced in other countries. And so the work that I do, I think, how can I make an impact, a positive impact? So those two perspectives are my reaction.
I'll go next. When I hear creation groans, I first of all feel more than I think. The first time I heard this phrase, I was very angry. I was really personally affected in my spirit. Felt a pain in the center of my core, just a feel of restlessness. And I think of Mother Earth in pain, and not pain related to happiness that brings forth life, but a pain due to the weight that she carries, the burdens she holds from abuse. And if we don't listen over time, the groaning will be silent, and that will be our end eventually. So the groans becoming like an indicator for a needful response. When you place heavy equipment on a wooden table, for instance, there's a creak, a groan that comes out, which tells you, enough is enough. So I suppose the frame creation groaning is an attempt to first name the ways we as humans today are really out of balance with the natural world. And that's why it's a groan and it's not a duet.
Yeah, I think it's a good title for an event like this, because it's so figurative in a way, and Meble described it really well just now. I think for me, as part of my role and my roles and my sort of personal background, I've been really privileged to be able to travel to a lot of different parts of the world, and sort of just seeing the beauty and the diversity of God's creation in different parts of the world has been, for me, one of the most sort of faith affirming experiences. And at the same time, it's everywhere you go, especially these days, I think it's always a recurring theme that you meet people whose lives are actually directly impacted by the groaning creation, who can witness how their livelihoods and their quality of life and the future prospects for themselves and their families are threatened by changes that we as humanity collectively have imparted on the climate and on nature in itself in so many ways. And coming from a part of the world where we are a wealthy part of the world, and have had these sort of patterns of consumption which are unsustainable in the long run. I feel it to be sort of a personal responsibility to be engaged in the subject and yeah, be one of those voices objecting to sort of accepting a normality that causes creation to groan in this way. I think it's yeah, definitely something I feel on a very personal level as well, that we as the Salvation Army should be a strong voice in this area. And I'm really glad that there are events like this happening in Canada as well as other parts of the world, and sort of movements that are starting to pick up steam for us to take this seriously on a personal and organizational level.
Well, and we're grateful to each of you for being part of today, but perhaps more importantly, for the work that you're doing every day to kind of work out this pain and this discomfort that you have on behalf of the organization. So please tell us a bit about the roles that you have and how caring for creation and working with that pain and discomfort that you both see and feel is part of the work that you're doing.
I really appreciate your speaking from the heart, Mabel, and I'm going to be taking a more technical approach. So maybe together we'll have a balanced conversation. So the work that I do in the property department, I've been with the property department for 8 years. And I have been privileged enough to work on the East Coast, and now I'm on the West Coast up to Labrador. And I've also seen the great diversity of Mother Nature in our country. And so when it comes time to do the work that I do, there's often a conflict, okay? Getting on a plane, going somewhere, the carbon emissions for that, and also buildings. Buildings are inherently bad for the environment. And so I'm just going to share a screen because it'll help to understand how I've been able to reconcile that pain. So just give me a moment here. Let's see, share screen. And so the screen that I have up, I'm not a master of this program, but anyway, you can see the two slides here. Buildings represent 40% of carbon emissions in the world, and so existing buildings, it's very expensive to modify existing buildings. And new buildings, of course, we can make better choices in how we do that. There are material choices for new buildings, which are discussed as embodied carbon. So in order to produce a thing that goes in a building, carbon is going to be released. But also, more importantly, it's the building operations that represent 72% of the carbon in the building for the life of the building that have such an impact. So I'm going to stop sharing that. So in my work, I carry this, and I think even if we go and build a new building, no matter how you do it, you're going to have a negative impact on the environment. And so I've had to spend a lot of time arguing and debating with my department about how to go about doing this. And there was a shift when I suddenly realized that the Salvation Army mission, which is, to help others, is dependent upon how we go about building and how we go about managing our resources, our financial resources. So at one point I said to, my department, it's all about operating costs. If we can lower those operating costs, which represent 72% of the carbon emissions, and also 72% of the cost of building over the life of the building, then we can guarantee that we can operate mission over a longer period of time. So that was a game changer. And that was a way that I think charities can grab on to sustainable buildings and really be effective. And right now we're getting lots of funding from government agencies to help charities like the Salvation Army do the work that needs to happen, because they recognize that our funds are limited. So it was that mission. It was aligning the mission with operating costs that really made things possible. So I am working on a project right now in Edmonton, which is going to be the most sustainable project that the Salvation Army has done. And also the consultants that I'm working at are constantly saying, you know, we can't believe we're here. We can't believe that we're achieving this. So so that's really exciting. And the project we've been focusing more on the operational costs and not the material costs, although the material is important. There has been important discussions. We decided to build with wood and not steel because of the extremely high carbon emissions in manufacturing steel. And also wood can be more of a locally sourced material. So those are some of the things that have gone into my work, and I'm very proud to be asking these questions, and even more proud to take my own personal pain and translate it into something that is a benefit for others. Because oftentimes, you know, we go against what we believe and what others maybe don't buy into. And so when you can have both working, that's when the magic happens. So
Thank you.
That's where I'm at.
Thank you, Michaela. That was very inspiring. Chris, please tell us about your work.
Yeah, thanks. It's sharing from the perspective of others, this international social enterprise. I feel it's this question is challenging in a way. It's there's a sense where, as a fair trade concept, where we encourage people to buy products that, in a way, perhaps can be deemed non-essential. We could consider ourselves part of the problem of environmental degradation and climate change in the sense that we are producing items that are, you know, need to be packaged, shipped, sold, and used around the world. But at the same time, I do very much believe that we can be part of the solution in various ways. Others, for those of you who don't know it necessarily well, we haven't been exposed too broadly in Canada yet, although we're working on that, which I'm happy to share. But we produce basically handmade products as a way to create jobs for people that are in contact with the Salvation Army in Bangladesh and Kenya, as well as other countries that we've worked with in the past. And primarily, we're wanting to use trade as a tool for job creation, but at the same time, I think it's there's very much ways in which we can contribute to positively to the environment. I would say that one of the ways is that although some of the items that we make, like kitchen tools, tea towels, these would be non-essential in the sense that you could probably survive without them. Most of us have these things at home. We have baskets for storage, we have other home goods, we drink coffee, we use Christmas decorations. I think others can concretely be one way of reducing the environmental impact of some of these products, replacing, for instance, products that would ordinarily have been made with plastic with wooden products or products sourced from other sustainable natural sources, producing items out of recycled materials, which we do. Staying away from plastic packaging, and also developing a range of products that we're doing right now to replace single-use products. Like we've had some reusable fruit and vegetable bags. We have reusable wooden cutlery to replace one-time plastics, sort of kitchen scrubbers from natural sisal fibers, those kind of things. So very concretely sort of replacing single-use plastic items with things made from natural sources, things made without the need for a lot of electricity and power, which is another sort of major source of climate emissions in the world, sort of this need for energy, trying to go back to sort of the focus on handmade products using local skills, locally available materials, and with low energy requirement. Those kind of things are sort of concrete ways in which we perhaps replace something with something else that is a little bit less environmentally damaging. That's the very concrete thing. I think in the more in general, a concept like others, and maybe in a wider sense, the movement towards fair trade, ethical trade, with similar concepts like us, is for the first thing a statement and an encouragement, perhaps towards less consumption in general, which sounds maybe a little strange for a trading company that wants to sell products, but I think our message would be, rather than buy a lot and change out your home equipment a lot, focus on durable quality products that have, in addition, a social impact like we do, rather than sort of cheap, expendable, exchangeable products that you change out a lot of the time. I think even sort of just as a wider movement to promote like sustainable trading practices, sustainable production practices, it's also a way of influencing attitudes and behaviors that are sort of speaking into those levels and those patterns of consumption that we have in our part of the world, that we're so accustomed to, maybe, that we don't think twice about where the things that we buy are made, under what conditions, from what materials. We're just so used to sort of being flooded with options all the time, and really focusing on the journey of the product, the material that the product is made of, the people, especially for us, behind each product. That's sort of attempting at least to shift focus and to shift people's attention and to shift people's consumption patterns over time. So in a very broad sense, I would say that's as much a part of our goal as anything, and using sort of using the available means of an interconnected world and the need to sort of buy products as a tool to create opportunities as well for vulnerable people in the countries that we source products from. So yeah.
Thank you, Chris. It strikes me that COVID is a good time to rethink, lots of the things that you're asking us to rethink. In Canada, parts of the country are still in lockdown, and there's lots of questions about what is essential. But just because something is not essential doesn't mean it's not important. And that, and more than ever, it seems our consumptive choices are really important, in our local communities. So I'm grateful for you expanding that out and bringing that moment to us. Mabel, please tell us about your work.
Thank you very much. I think for those who don't know about ISJC, in which I'm intern with for this year, ISJC, or the International Social Justice Commission, is the Salvation Army's strategic voice to advocate for human dignity and social justice within the world. One of our works is centered around developing international position statements on social justice issues which affect God's people and God's creation. But you also realize that social justice touches beyond human issues of racism, of sexism, human trafficking, but also aspects of accountability to our actions and our roles in ensuring balance as good stewards of God's creation. We are aware through the position statements of caring for the environment that issues affecting our creation exist. And so we push and we advocate and bring to the limelight a global call for response. The partnership with ISJC, with the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals is a co-foundation and guiding principle to the work of ISJC, and specifically my role this year with others. I have a unique advantage with the ISJC's partnership with others because I am experiencing the hands-on process on care for the environment through recycled production with artisans from Kenya and Bangladesh, as well as engaging in advocacy on social injustices, and in the process, determining our worth and impact of others.
Thank you, Mabel. That leads us really well into the next question, which I'll leave to Crystal, but I appreciated Thank you.
Yeah, so if this hasn't already come up into your answers, and some of it has, but we want to give you an additional opportunity to talk about how you see creation care aligning with the Salvation Army mission, the vision, the values, or even faith in God and the good news, the gospel message. We'd love to hear your opinions.
I think I covered mine. With just learning, just that light bulb going off about mission and connecting it to what I believe in. So it was a very powerful thing for me.
I'm happy to go next. I believe that we are part of God's creation, and our calling and ministry is motivated by the love of God, and it's embedded in who we are as part of His creation. God's creation is not limited to man and his vulnerability, just because we are human beings and we feel that we have a say above the creation, but it doesn't mean that God loves nature less. So our mission calls us to respond beyond social injustice issues of the human race, but there is no separation to the values God has placed to believers, non-believers, in nature or life on land, in air, and under the sea. I believe that we are part of the same body of Christ. If one part of the body is suffering, the whole is suffering. I think our interdependence with the creation is inseparable. And in some ways, I think it's us who creates the imbalance through our actions. Although nature has a way of resetting itself against all odds, but not sure if we as the human race has that capacity. So as our message is based on the Bible, it's clear that anger, that the creation is angry. There's pains, there's groans of nature, and its desire and anticipation for freedom. I mean, I believe that our existence, not only as Salvationists but as Christians, is to learn to cry, to laugh, and be pulled in our spirits when God's creation groans, or when it sings and flourishes in springs and summer. I was telling Chris the other day that I have never seen snow. I mean, I've never seen snow since I was born, and I watch movies. I see people throwing snowballs and hitting each other. I'm like, I want to hit somebody with a snowball one time in the future. So, okay, it will be a bit gentle, but yeah, I've never seen snow. And I also understand that there are parts of Norway that experience darkness and lights for months. And I'm so fascinated and awed at God's creation and diversity as a Salvationist and a believer. And this increases my own faith and admiration of who God is and his love, in which we as Salvationists believe in. We have a mandate, but also have a connection through our vision and mission statements to adapt to nature, and not the expecting to be the other way around. So we must connect and be empathetic to act as we continue to hold our values of hope, of service, of dignity and stewardship to others, and others including God's creation. We can't be greedy in our interpretation of our mission and values. So our love for God is love to everything about him, his supremacy, his miracles, the Holy Spirit, and his people who include the beauty and the sounds of the earth that forms part of him for us and through us.
To say, Mabel, it's hard to sort of follow you after your very eloquent and substantive comments, but I can just say amen to that. And yeah, I think for me, as for probably everyone else in the panel, that sort of link to our mission, to our values, to our vision is very is so obvious that it's part of our core, part of our identity as Christians and as Salvationists in particular. Perhaps is this sort of this care for others as part of a general care. I mean, there's the duty to care for creation as a whole. I think shines through from the first pages of the Bible and onwards. But so does this duty to care for our fellow humans, our fellow men and women, wherever they might be. And I think a few years back, I spent a year as well Mabel's shoes, although physically based in New York at the Social Justice Commission. And one of the resources from there that has sort of stuck with me, some quotes from it at least, is a Bible study called Jesus and Justice. And a particular quote there, which is sort of taken out of the parable of the Good Samaritan, where the question is sort of, well, who then is my neighbor? And the quote, the reflection in this document is that neighbors are anyone within the reach of our make a difference compassion. Neighbors aren't just anyone from anywhere. They're people within tangible reach of our compassion. And the challenge from Jesus is to realize just how widely our compassion can reach. And to me, that's just a great quote and a really challenging one as well in our world where everything is so interconnected, where we see that sort of, our lives here sort of are directly impacted, potentially directly impacting people in all parts of the world at the same time. Any given product that I use in my daily life is somehow connected to a whole chain of people who have been involved in its production, transport, procurement somehow. Norway, we're a fishing nation. Even the fish that we fish, we package it, send it to China. They cut it into pieces and repackage it and send it back to us, to our freezers. Like that's just an example of how interconnected the world is in every single way. And that really challenges me in this sort of, well, who then is my neighbor? Who's actually within reach of my capacity to make a difference, my make a difference compassion. And that really links on to this subject of creation care, which at the end of the day is also about how we care for our neighbors, albeit in other parts of the world perhaps than just my own neighborhood.
You all have lovely, voluptuous answers to these questions. And so as we keep asking new ones, it seems like we're just going to give you new opportunities to expound on the wonderful things you've already been saying. Here it comes again. But just feel free to use this opportunity to talk about anything you see as the key issues, the biggest issues in the world today, which are causing creation to groan. Specifically, the things that you think that the Salvation Army should take responsibility for and work to address. We'd love for you to tell us some things you think we should start doing and some things that we should stop doing as an organization or as individual members, employees, friends of the organization. Thanks.
So I'm going to do the kind of this individual versus global thing again, because individually, I think our biggest obstacle is our own minds, our own habits. And I'm just going to say that, I don't know how many years ago, or if it was decades ago, when my awareness of plastic bags became an issue, and I committed to bringing my own bags, making my own bags out of cloth and bringing them to the grocery store, and how many times I forgot to bring them, and how many times I still forget to bring them. And that's just an example of, I really want to make this change, and my own habits are my own obstacle. So to me, that we all have different manifestations of that, but that is a huge habitual obstacle for humankind. Now, bringing that to the Salvation Army, of course, there is the same mindset in the Salvation Army that we have to keep going ahead as usual. And when you change mindset, that becomes very difficult. But I think the Salvation Army is good at that. We're good at mobilizing and we're good at shifting. We just need to understand what that shift needs to be. So for me, working in the property department, things like our environmental position paper, or it's not really a policy right now, but for me, I'm grasping at straws, okay? So I go to my consultants on these projects and I say, Salvation Army has an environmental policy. It's very broad. We have to show good stewardship of our natural resources. And I use that as leverage to get consultants to try and pay attention. And I say, what are your organizations telling you to do? And why are you not doing it? I also go to the international community and, the International Panel on or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And they come out, that's a body of scientists that come out and say, we have to get to net zero by 2050 for all human activity. How are we dealing with that? I think the Salvation Army needs to be more specific about where our accountability lies to the environment. Are we going to follow these international scientists? Are we going to follow our Canadian government, the Paris Agreement? We have to say something. We have to take a position so that the individuals in the organization can use that as leverage to make this kind of change happen. And I'm working on it.
I'm glad, and I shouldn't. Good. I shouldn't say this in a live broadcast, not knowing who's listening, but I helped to write that policy, over a decade ago, and then it's languished ever since. So, yes, let's do better. Yeah.
And I'm using it,
yeah.
using it. But certainly taking it to the next step, and the property department is also looking at how to make that more tangible, right?
Great.
Jump in, Mabel. Yeah, thanks. First of all, I think I'm also part of a group here at THQ Norway working on finding ways to make the Salvation Army a more green organization in our territory. And I certainly intend to steal all of the good ideas that Michaela is working on in your area of property and other things. I think learning from each other, that's one of the fantastic things of being a global organization like this. We have a lot of capacities within our ranks, and we can do even more in sort of sharing knowledge across our borders. You asked a bit about what kind of issues do we see as the main issues? I think was a part of the question causing creation to groan. I think being in 132 countries, you could get a ton of different answers to that question, but we can't get away from these sort of overall global themes, and we can't get away from the climate change issue, which you referenced just now, Michaela. I think there are some, there's a sense in my part of the world sometimes that this is such a politicized issue, and it's a question about what policies are going to be effective, and also a sense of, well, whatever we do here, it doesn't really matter because we're just such a tiny country and all of that. But I think it's just we need to get beyond the sort of contention about it and focus on how this is. There are justice elements to this globally in terms of the parts of the world being responsible for this, and those most vulnerable to the effects of it being particularly, subsistence farmers and in other parts of the world than my own, certainly. And that's just such a potentially sort of existential issue for so many people that we need to keep putting that front and center. And as an organization, what can we do more of and less of? I think one of the things that we definitely can do more of is use our voice more firmly on this issue, talk more about it, more forums like this, more panel discussions in more places, more times, and also sort of use our global voice. I think some places, some countries, there's certainly a reservation about engaging with issues that can seem political, and this one would be one of them. But I think we need to move beyond that, focus on why does it matter to us. It matters because of our faith. It matters because of our commitment to our fellow men and women and people all over the world. And there's justice issues at the bottom of this that we have a duty to address, I would say. And so, yeah, not shying away from the political, raising our voice more often. I think in general, on an organizational level and an individual level, you referenced both as well, Michaela, I think keep asking ourselves the difficult questions. and not shy away from those either, because we can always improve, and there's always any number of areas where we can improve our own practices. We're a massive organization with massive purchasing power, and that also carries a lot of responsibility about how we use that. And there are at any given time dilemmas and difficult questions, like, you know, do we, what's the best stewardship of our resources? Is it expending them as cautiously as possible, going for the cheapest options, you know, or is it paying a lot more for something even that guarantees a lower environmental or social impact? I'm not suggesting that there's always an easy answer to that question, but I think the fact that it's a difficult question doesn't mean we shouldn't continually ask it and sort of apply that to almost everything that we do in every area that we as an organization have some sort of opportunity to adjust our practices. So keep asking ourselves the tough questions, keep using our voice, and striving always to see the bigger picture, I think, also beyond our borders and stuff, because we can get very sort of siloed in many parts of our organization and also internationally, I think.
Can I just respond to the whole idea of procurement and money? And I think it's a very important one. And we're moving from, well, at least with the work that I do, there's an idea that if you're going to be more sustainable, it's going to cost you more money. And I just don't think that is the case anymore. I think that what is your filter that you're seeing the world? If it's money, then that's going to lead you in a certain direction. If it's people, then that's going to lead you in a different direction. I mean, Chris, the work that you're doing, it's about the journey of what's being made. That's about people. So if that's your focus, that's going to lead you down that path. So, you know, and I think our filter has been money, and it's just time for a shift. The Grace Village project that I just talked about, you know, that's a $30 million project. We've just finished going out to tender. It's about to start construction. Usually when you tender a project like that, it's money, that's it. But we built in, part of the evaluation was about local material procurement and local trades. And so the contractors had to put their price together, but they also had to submit kind of a proposal for how they're going to guarantee local materials and trades. So that's kind of a new shift for the Salvation Army and it was a very successful one. And in some ways, I don't think we took it far enough, but it's a beginning, right?
Thank you. Mabel, I'll ask if you want to weigh in on this question, and it's okay if you don't.
Thank you, Amy. I think some of the biggest issues in the world are that efforts for recycling, I don't think are massive, or those practicing are not the highest percentage that actually contributes to the disruption of the creation. For instance, I recycle water bottles, I collect litter, and I'm very much awake on these issues. But we have organizations that are in massive production of environmental unfriendly products. So my long-term impact doesn't make a dent in the response. So we need to maybe increase the magnitude of our individual responses. I believe as a Salvation Army, we could aim to do a lot of partnerships with other like-minded organizations and advocate on higher levels of better ways of production and maybe reduction of waste into the ecosystem. With partnerships, I think it would be possible to have stronger voices to influence systems towards maybe local methodologies for strengthening economies, or rely less for any import and expert investors that are not really looking at the environment as a factor. The church, I believe the Salvation Army has a strong voice, and we know the Salvation Army is really highly respected, and we need to embrace this value and identity on who we are in the face of the world. I also think even as faith-based individuals, there is sort of a gap in our relationship with Earth. It's as if we live apart, as if we are not part of the same creation. I appreciate this forum very much, but I know there's also a lot of advocacy and publicity going on this month because it's Earth Month. But after a while, unless you are a frontliner or an advocate in caring for the creation, this will be shelved or second priority for majority of the individuals. So can we be more deliberate to make this like a natural day-to-day awareness so that we stay awake without expectations for external stimulants. So as a church, I think we are privileged to have, because we have ready communities, we have ready congregations. Think of our zones, our territories, divisions, corps, outposts, all the brass band and songsters that we have groups, that we can mentor and teach and empower the Salvation Army family to recognize the significance for healthy relationships with nature and God's creation. I think Michaela has mentioned this in one of her reflections, that our global call as Salvation Army to respond to events is exceptional, and I think it's in our DNA. It would be imperative for decision makers to vet all vendors and processes linked to the planning of these events, maybe to ensure that all hospitality vendors fit within a checklist that guarantees their services are environmentally friendly, use of biodegradable plates or recycled materials, or the carbon footprint is totally reduced. So, and also our image to the world is that we are a recycling organization with all the thrift stalls and shops across the States, the UK, and other parts of the world. But we need that image exemplified in our day-to-day soldiership through deliberate awareness. Maybe like Sunday after 22nd of April, like this Sunday, should be a Global Arts Day and should be in the Salvation Army's International Year calendar, for instance. Like everyone in the world, they know the Sunday after 22nd of April, it's Arts Day. Everybody, songs are written, timbral brigades are marching all over, dances are choreographed and so forth. Lastly, I think as a Salvation Army, we could strengthen policy development and implementation from the leadership levels on this issue. If we can have departments and focal people for different programs, why not have a focal person in each territory specifically employed to push for these policies and follow up implementation of the same? So we need to take advantage of our existing structures and not be lazy about creating awareness for real life-changing issues. We must live the values we read, loving God and loving Mother Nature. And the church can be the frontliner in prompting people to recycle and take stock of our lives between saving creation, as it supports our livelihoods as well.
Just listening to you share about your roles is absolutely inspiring. And we understand that there might be viewers who are watching today who might feel overwhelmed and maybe even a little bit debilitated by the groaning of creation. And so we would like for you to share maybe some of the practical practices that you do outside of your day jobs. And what might you suggest to help us cut through some of those overwhelming feels that we might have? What can we take from today and respond with immediately?
It's a hard question in some ways, because the pain motivates you to take action. And so you want to temper it and celebrate. And Mabel, that's what I got from you. It's not just about doing the right thing or not doing the wrong thing. We need to celebrate our connection with the earth, and we need to celebrate Mother Nature. We need to dance. We need to go outside and spend time in nature so that we build that relationship. So personally for me, I spend time outside. I am trying to, and COVID has brought this to me at this time in my life, the ability to stay in one place, the ability to see the spring buds grow in my garden. And I have a garden that is full of food. I have a son that is obsessed with planting trees, fruit trees, and so we have all kinds of things in our garden that will feed us, that will heal us. So for me, that's my place of healing, is just being in nature, getting my hands dirty, planting things. I have backyard chickens. I eat their eggs. It's wonderful. So that's my joy.
I was thinking about something I was reading earlier, and it basically said, what I stand for is what I stand on. And that whole connectedness to creation. I'd love to hear Chris and Meble talk a little bit more about this as well.
I guess here quickly, I think Mabel's unmuting. So Meble, say something eloquent and then I'll think of something.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. I want to just say that I personally feel inspired, on a day-to-day basis. I think it's because of my calling for the church and the holistic body of Christ, whichever manner it unfolds, whether it's taking walks in a field or being in a farm or listening to the sound of birds, connects me to the wholeness as a Christian. And I think this is a practice that hooks me to the creation. I still feel we need to recognize that not every person will feel or be awakened by the groaning of creation. But I think those of us who are, I believe, our individual decisions for basic practices of recycling or reusing or reducing waste brings healing to the creation and also just to our own souls. The fact that we are deeply talking about a sadness in our creation, I think, means that we are ready to do something about it, and we have power to influence however small the change will be. So whatever we do today will affect the living standards of future generations and the existence, I think, of the human species. One takeaway for us, I think, should be to change our mindset and to relate to the creation as equals and coexist and depend on each other. Like a relationship with a good friend, that's accountable, it's respectable, it's sensitive. This week, I've had an opportunity to talk to 2 organizations and a group of CEOs and 5 friends about Earth Day. 50% of them actually had no clue that this day existed. So one thing from here is, if you have knowledge, share it and let others join the campaign.
Thanks. Yeah, I would add, I think, getting depressed about the scope of the task ahead of us and so forth. I think a source of inspiration might be young people in many parts of the world who the last few years have very visibly and vocally risen up to say that, what, this is our future, this is our planet, this is for us and our children, and myself having a young daughter who's probably making noise in the background here. That's the motivation for me to think, okay, well, if there is the slightest risk that what we're doing now will make the planet uninhabitable for her when she grows up, then we better do whatever we can to prevent that or to reduce that risk. And I think it's been inspiring to see the way that young people have stood up for this issue, and that's certainly something I take inspiration from. And beyond that, in terms of personal practices, I don't know in terms of specifics to say too much about that, but that in general, I try to at least always be looking for information and knowledge about what actually works. Like, what can I do that actually works? That's not just tokenism, but that has some sort of little impact, and try to educate myself about the issue there. And when it comes to my personal consumption and shopping or whatever, things like that, I mean, there's certainly a lot of practices there in terms of moderation that you can bring with you. But there are also, almost in every area that you look, every product line, everything that you use, certainly in Norwegian context, there's more and more alternatives coming up that are better from a social perspective or environmental perspective. Sometimes they're harder to find, sometimes they're a bit more expensive, but I certainly always try to sort of cast my vote by where I shop and what I use my money on to, wherever I can. And I would encourage you, as a sort of almost like a source of entertainment as well, go looking for that, challenge yourself, find you're wanting to buy something, we'll see if there's an ethical or environmentally friendly brand to buy it from, if you do need to buy that thing, and so I think we need to keep wheels of the world ticking, because that's what creates opportunities and economic growth, jobs for people, brighter futures, development. But it can be done in an environmentally degrading way, or it can be done better, and it can always be done better. But and we need to sort of root for the companies and the people who are trying to make it better by sort of whatever little buy-in we can have in supporting their cause. So on a personal level, maybe that's some of the things I try to do.
Wonderful. Our time is just about gone, but in these last 2 minutes, now 1 minute, I wonder if you could rapid fire sort of tell us some person, some work that inspires you, continues, re-inspires you, some consciousness raising work, book, film, whatever, that you would share with the people listening, that you would recommend to kind of keep us moving beyond Earth Day into the other 11 months of this year.
Okay, I'm going to go first and I'll be quick. I have a slide to share. How is it working? Okay, here we go. This is an architect in India, and she spent 10 years of her early career living on her own. And I'll share this link because her story is amazing. And she came out of her retreat and started focusing on the materials around her. And she worked with local potters to create, to use their skills to create building materials. So it's kind of like what Chris was talking about, the story of the making of things. And I believe that is that's inspiring for me. And I think that that's a way out of this environmental crisis, is to focus on the people power instead of manufacturing of things.
Okay, I'll go next. The first lockdown last year, when COVID-19 was just a newbie, I was locked down in a beautiful community in eastern part of Kenya. And my friend Margaret decided she was going to be a farmer during the lockdown period. So she had acquired a piece of land and was very interested to make use of it. So I visited her farm, and on the first day went to just shrubs, thorns, bush grass and all. And we prayed around the farm, asking God to teach her the right farming methods. And in the end, she told me, Meble, I'm going to farm the God's way. And I was like, what do you mean farming the God's way? And she said, there's actually this concept that comes from this book. I don't know if you can see it, but the book is edited by Dan Fountain. It says, let's restore our land. The book highlights concerns that a church and community leaders in one village tackled in relation to land, forest, and how God wanted them to respond. It helps determine solutions for problems and practical illustrated applications, leading to holistic development that is really community-based. As a result of this transfer of best practices on farming methods and environmental conservation emerged. So this was an intellectual wake-up call for me and a challenge in my own understanding of caring for God's creation. I talk about this book everywhere. I mean, it's amazing. It's very simplified. It's practical, and it has an integrated, holistic perspective to living in and with God's creation. So it's really good. I love it.
Good, yeah. Lots to say. I'll keep it short. I think, you could. For me, always that spirit of older Salvationists that have that sort of radical commitment to our mission, and that sort of self-sacrificing devotion to making a difference. I think, like, on a personal level, that often inspires me and drives me. Also in this issue, I would say that sort of like, well, we got to maintain that spirit and take that forward to the next generations in the issues that matter for them. And on a very concrete level, on a very different level, I'm just now reading the book that Bill Gates recently released about how to avoid a climate disaster, the solutions we have and the breakthroughs we need. An interesting book, which I'm not done with yet, so I should probably not recommend it until I finished it, but just an example of sort of well, you know what, there's the technology is there. This is what we need to do. These are the innovations we need to focus on. This is what we need to push, and this is how much it will cost in every area. Like, it's a very technical kind of way through, but showing that, you know what, this is within our reach, within our capacity as humanity, if we sort of combine our wisdom and our focus into changing the world, and we can do it. So yeah, right now that's what I'm reading.
Great. Well, that brings us to the end of our time together. We're most grateful for each of you for sharing out of your pain and out of your passion and out of your love for others and for the earth. Thank you so much for being with us today and for all you're doing to inspire us and others, and to hear and lessen the groaning. Thank you.